video, we're going to be talking about context menus, which are available now with the Retina displays on the Apple Watch. So context menus are pretty neat. Basically, if you do a force touch on your watch screen, in other words, you kind of press down slightly harder than usual, we can pop up a context menu. And then we can kind of assign functions to the context menu to change the interface maybe, or to change some value on the interface. And they're pretty useful. And if you're used to, say in Mac OS, when you control click on something, it gives you various options like cut, copy, paste. Well, this is kind of the same logic. So you kind of force touch and you get up to 4 options to select from. So note I said up to 4, you can only have up to 4 actions, but each one can have a different function assigned to it. So each one has a string, which is going to be basically a title. You can also use some built-in images, or you can put in your own template images to use as kind of a background image. So let's go ahead and jump right in and see how we can get it to display a basic context menu at first. So I'm going to look in my objects library. As you can see, I already have menu selected down here. So there's two things, menu and menu item. So menu items obviously will go into the parent menu item, object rather. So if I grab menu, we can see here, menu displays a list of menu items which are associated with the action methods of the parent interface controller. Okay, so in our case, the parent interface controller is just going to be our main storyboard interface storyboard controller. We don't really have other controller or interfaces at this point. So if I grab it, bring it in, drop it, it looks like it's not there, but we can see over in the attributes inspector, it does have it selected. So if I pop out this little panel, and I can do that on the lower left here, so we can see here that now we have, within the purview of our interface controller, we have a menu object, and within that there's a menu item. So by default, it just starts with one menu item. And as you can see here, you can add more, up to 4. I mean, it seems to let you add more than 4, but these won't really show up. So add up to 4. And there's different ways to add menu items. So you can add them here, of course, in the interface builder. Anything you add here cannot be removed programmatically. On the other hand, you can also add items programmatically, and those can be removed or added programmatically. So different ways of achieving it. So if you know your interface, your menu items are not going to change, there's no harm in doing it using the interface builder. Otherwise, if you want to kind of selectively remove menu items, you're going to need to do that programmatically. So you know what, let's add 2 menu items here. And it's kind of unfortunate, it doesn't really display it here on the interface, but if we go to say menu item 1, you give it a title. This is basically a string that's going to display whatever you want it to display. So if, for example, we wanted a context menu to do something like either accept or decline, so I'm going to call this one accept. Image, you can put in a custom image, or you can use one of the built-in ones already. So we can see there's a whole bunch we can choose from. For example, accept, add, there's things like mute, pause, play, and so on. So you know what, I'm just going to go with accept for this one. And we can see over here now that it has updated to display the name that I gave it, accept. Right, this one will do kind of the opposite. So we'll say decline. Decline. Image, let's put in, let's see, yeah, there's a decline image. Okay. So this is really all we need at this point, except we need to basically associate each of these with a different function. So I'm going to go into my assistant editor here. Okay, and as you can see, it's just blank. There's nothing in here at this point. So I can just control click one of these menu items and bring it over as a function, or as an action rather. All right, so I'm going to put that, let's see, I'll put that under the will activate function. Okay, so control click, drag it over, and we can see we can't make it an outlet. It can only be an action. And let's see, let's call this one my accept menu. We'll just call it my accept actually. My accept, right? And it's just basically a function associated with this action. So let's just do something like this. So we'll just print to console accepted for now anyway. Right? It's always kind of a good way to test it out in my opinion. We'll do kind of the same thing for decline. So we'll say my decline. All right, and this one we'll just print the opposite. So print declined. Okay, and this should be all we need to get it to display a contextual menu when we do a force touch on the watch. So to do that, let's go ahead and let's launch the simulator. And we're going to need to simulate a force touch. Now, on my MacBook, I can simulate that by kind of doing a double click on the touchpad. Otherwise, you will have to kind of look at your hardware options for the simulator to see how you can simulate a force touch. So here we go. I'm going to kind of do a double click on my touchpad, and there we go. You can see it popped out the menu items, and it kind of automatically fills the space. So if there were 4, you would see 1, 2, 3, 4 instead. But you know what? Let's open up the console down here. We'll keep an eye on it. And if I tap accept, okay, so it ran that function. Now I do another force touch. We can do decline, and it just runs the function, and then whatever you tap on, then it gets rid of the context menu. Right, so it's not always displayed because it's in the name, right? It's a contextual menu. We could do something else, like for example, we can assign a label here, and whatever we select, it can update the label. So while we're doing that, let's add a couple more options here. So our menu, we can, let's get rid of our assistant editor here. So our menu, we can add a couple more items. So we'll add 2 more. This one, let's see, what should this one say? This one could be, I don't know, maybe. Image, oh, there is maybe. Okay, that's good. And then this one can be maybe not. And let's see, what should we do this one? Let's just do more, I guess. Let's see what that image looks like. Okay, and as you can see, these are all kind of pre-installed, built in. Okay, so we have maybe, decline, maybe not, and accept. And you know what, let's add in another thing we can manipulate, which is just a label object. So I'm just going to put this in the center, vertical center. And let's see, let's go back to our interface builder, or our assistant editor rather. And we'll grab the label here and make it an outlet. Label, outlet, my label. Do label, my label. Okay, so now we have a label. Let's make it just blank at first. Label my label dot set text. Just make it an empty string. Okay, and now when we hit accept, let's change what the label says, right? Essentially the same logic, except this way we won't have to go to our console. We can see it in our actual interface. So we'll say label my label dot set text, and we'll say accepted. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this code, put it into the my decline function. We'll say declined, and we'll attach functions to our other menu items as well here. So my maybe, and maybe not. My maybe not. Okay, and same logic again. Maybe, and finally maybe not. So I mean, this is a super simple example, but you can imagine where this could be useful. You know, like let's say you have a picker object or a table, and you want to be able to give some kind of contextual option. So if the user taps and selects something in a picker, you want to maybe give an option to preserve that name or whatever it may be. You can use a contextual menu for that. So here I go. I'm going to force touch. Right? Okay. So accept, decline, maybe, maybe not. So let's say if we tap maybe, hey, pretty neat. Right? So our label is updating. We can do the same for all of these. And these just kind of run regular functions. So once you get how these menu items work, well, it's pretty simple to then kind of manipulate whatever you need to manipulate. And you know what? I'm just curious to see what happens if we add more than 4 items. So let's try to add a 5th one. We'll go to our attributes inspector, items 5. This one, we'll have to go back to our attributes inspector. Let's call it item number 5. Image, I'm just going to select anything. And let's attach a function that kind of does nothing. Okay, I'll make room for it here. Bring it over. Item 5. All right, let's test it out and let's see what happens. All right, there we go, compiling, awesome. So there wasn't a build error, which is always good. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, so it just doesn't display anything. So it's kind of funny that it lets you put more than 4, but then it just doesn't show it. You can't really scroll to the side either. I'm trying to scroll. Can't really do that. So maybe not indeed. Okay, so you know what? I'm just going to get rid of that here. Okay, get rid of that there. Another thing we can do is we can actually use our own image here for the background. There are a couple rules though for the image. It has to be a template image, which means we can't really display a full image if we wanted to. We can display just a template. And if you have something like, for example, let me bring in my template here. Oh, I have two windows open. So this is the template I'm going to use. So I have my original heart.png and I created a mini version. So tiny heart at 2x.png. And basically, it has to be smaller than the tiny little window that pops up. So for example, these round circular images, it has to be smaller than that or else it won't display properly. Like for example, if I were to try to put my heart at 2x, it would just basically center it and it would just be all black in this image, which is not what I want. So for image sizes, you have to be careful. If it's, the 38 millimeter watch, it has to be kind of smaller than 70 by 70 pixels. For the bigger one, the 42 millimeter, it has to be smaller than 80 by 80 pixels. So this one, it is actually 80 by 66, I believe. So this should work just fine. So what we can do is we can add it to our assets library. So let's go navigate to there. So in our assets.xc assets category here, I'm going to bring in my tiny heart image. So just drag it and drop it. And because I gave it the @2x suffix, it kind of removes that, but it makes sure that it gives it the 2x version for our Retina screen. Even though it's a tiny image, it's kind of nice to be able to do that. And then all we need to do really is, okay, let's see. We'll go here. We'll pop this out and pop this in actually. And we'll go to our menu. Let's say instead of the accept kind of default image, we want to use our own image. Well, you can just say custom and you can just type it in. So for example, tiny heart, and it usually auto completes. We don't have star on our app bundle. I have star, I believe, on the actual phone bundle. So if we look here, yeah, so that's where we're looking for that. I'm going to delete that actually. Okay, so yeah, and now we can use the tiny heart. I did also want to make sure that I specify explicitly that it's a template image. So I can do that by going to assets or xc assets. And over here, render as, you can see I'm in the attributes inspector. So render as template image, just to be sure. Right? And then now this should work. So let's test it out in the simulator. I'm just going to run it again. And just goes to show that it's pretty customizable in terms of what you can show. Keeping in mind, you do want it to be kind of clear what it does. So if you have a context menu and it said like, for example, then it would probably make sense to have a little heart. But if it's something like accept, it doesn't really make sense to have a heart. But there we go, we have it here. So you can see the transparent background was just filled in by the white space of the button. And then it just renders it as a template image, like so. And that's how you can add your own images. Okay, and now let's get back to our standard view here. Go to our interface, get rid of that. All right. Next, let's take a look at how to set these up programmatically instead. So what I'm going to do is I will go into my objects here, and I'm just going to erase all of these. Goodbye. Okay, so now menu, if we look at our attributes inspector, it should say menu items 0. So obviously on its own, this wouldn't really do anything. And now these are not associated with anything either. So I'm going to get rid of them. Goodbye. Okay, so it's actually quite easy to set these programmatically. And you might notice something here. So if you try to click and drag the menu and create an outlet, it doesn't let you. And it's actually because you can't have multiple contextual menus on one interface. So whenever we say, okay, set menu item, it's going to know to put it to whatever menu object we have on our interface because we can only have one. So all we need to do, let's configure it when we run super awake. So we can actually just say add menu item. You can see there's a couple options here for us. So we can add it with image name, string, title string, etc. We can use a UI image, or we could use a WK item icon if we want to use a built-in icon. So let's go with the first one at first. So add menu item with image named. I'm just going to put in my image that I called tiny heart. Title will be whatever string we want to say. So let's say we want it to say like because it's a little heart, right? And selector, this is where we can basically assign a function for it to run. So let's go ahead and let's define a function here. So function liked, for example. And it's just going to do something simple. It's just going to set the text again for the label. Label my label dot set text. Text I like this. Okay, and now we can just give it a selector here. So we can say selector. What selector do we want? So what function do we want to run? Let's just run the liked function. Okay, like so. And this should allow us to create a contextual menu item, give it an image, give it a title, and it'll even allow us to run a function. So that's the theory. Let's test it out. And then if this works, we can kind of expand out to other menu items as well. All right, build succeeded. And any second now, there we go. Okay. And hey, there it is. It's what we created, right? Use the image we wanted. It has the string we want. I can tap on it, and it does the function when I tell it to do the function. Let's add a couple others just because. So say add menu item, and we'll use a built-in menu item icon. And we can see what's available to us. Let me command click this. Let's see. Let's take a look at what we can choose. So we can say WK menu item icon accept. Let's go with decline. WK menu item icon decline. So we can say WK menu item icon dot decline. Pretty easy actually. Title will be do not like func dislike. You see the function, they don't take any argument, so it makes our lives a bit easier also. Label my label dot set text I don't like this. And then depending on what kind of app you have, of course, your methodology will be a little bit different. But let's give it a selector here. Dislike. We have to specify it's a selector, of course. Selector. All right. And let's just test this out to make sure it does grab the icon correctly. But as you can see, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. You could even use a UI image if you wanted to as well. Okay, there it goes. Force touch, like, do not like. Awesome, working exactly as intended. What about if we wanted to say remove menu items? So we can remove menu items that we add programmatically. So let's say next we wanted to maybe remove the programmatically entered menu items. Well, we can do that. So instead of dislike, we can say, let's see, menu, clear all menu items. Okay, and as you can see here, removes all programmatically added actions from the context menu. Let's try it out. This should be interesting. Okay, build succeeded. We'll launch this puppy up. Okay, double tap, dislike. Now if I force touch again, oh no, we don't have any menu items. We cleared them, but at least it works. And it's kind of a workaround if you wanted to keep one menu item. So for example, you wanted to get rid of do not like, but you still wanted a menu item available. You can just kind of run add menu item again. So actually, let me properly grab this, copy, paste, So this will clear them all, and then it should instantiate another menu item with the same info we had before. So, you could assign this to a function, for example, to kind of clear up your code a bit. But this is kind of one workaround if you didn't actually want to clear all of them. But let's try it out to make sure it works as usual. Okay, force touch, do not like. Now I force touch again. Now only like is available. All right, so a couple different ways you can kind of approach this. You can clear the ball and then add another one, or if you just wanted to only give the contextual option once, and then if the user selects something, you can just clear all menu items. You could also just say, okay, run whatever logic you need to do, then clear all menu items for every function. Max is 4, so you're not going to have to repeat yourself too many times. But, different ways of approaching a similar problem.